And I ended up finding out I had Hashimoto's, which is like an underactive thyroid. And it explained part of the reason why I was like so fatigued and just feeling off. But what she explained to me was that essentially this was because of stress. Like it wasn't something that I probably got from like hereditary or, anything like that. She said it was most likely onset by stress.
Hello and welcome to Nourish. My name is Kasha and I'm a holistic counselor and first-year doctoral student studying acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. My mission with this podcast is to share the stories of inspiring humans who have discovered that elusive state of balance between the Western concept of success with more Eastern philosophies of inner knowing and spirituality. Think yin and yang in flow. Now, these two do not need to be separate, but I know firsthand how difficult it can be to reconcile them. As a Silicon Valley burnout SKP myself, teaser, I left the tech world after 10 years of a thriving career in product management. I want to share the stories that I wish I had heard when I was struggling to find that balance and flow myself. On this podcast, we'll cover topics on spirituality, authentic career and relationships, slow living, mindfulness, alternative healing, concepts from psychology, and stories of transformation via traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. We'll also provide you with the tools to truly integrate both sides of your yin and yang. My hope is that these interviews can inspire you to rethink your own approach to mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. And if you are struggling, find your way back to authentic alignment. So, sit back, relax, and ground yourself back home, my love. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Nourish. I'm your host, Kasha, and I'm feeling super nourished just sharing this conversation with you. But for real, this particular episode, it left me feeling super zen. I just edited it, so I'm feeling it all over again, and I cannot wait to share it with you. On today's episode of Nourish, I speak with Jasmine Irven, who is a certified meditation teacher and the founder of the Sustainable Bliss Collective, a self-care community and membership for ambitious humans who need the reminder to slow down and reprioritize their self-care even when they're super busy. #relatable. Jasmine created Sustainable Bliss Collective after experiencing burnout and other health problems after overworking herself in corporate. She realized she needed to make a change and dove into personal development. Now she guides weekly self-care classes and inspires millions of people each month with reminders to take care of themselves, tips on reducing overwhelm with stress, and encouragement on building a more intentional life without giving up your big dreams and ambitions. I mean, could this be a more aligned interview for Nourish? Honestly, I am so excited. And this conversation hit home for me personally. As I've mentioned in prior episodes, as grateful as I am for the career path that I've had in my life, and honestly, it's a career path that I really hustled for, it did not come easily, and I absolutely sacrificed my own physical and mental health on multiple occasions for it. It's actually crazy because in this week's episode, we dive into some of the physical effects of burnout that Jasmine experienced herself. And honestly, Jasmine is probably the fourth guest that I've interviewed this week who has had an eerily similar story of getting pretty sick from overworking. Quick teaser, Jasmine herself suffered from Hashimoto's disease, and it was explicitly called out how stress had triggered this disease for her. So if you're someone who perhaps is struggling to find balance in their own lives, this episode will certainly be, hopefully, an eye-opener. We dive into recognizing the signs of burnout, what to do when you feel off but aren't clear what the root cause is, what do I need. We talked about Jasmine's own journey with Hashimoto's and creating a successful, thriving online business and a community as an introvert. And finally, we share tangible tips about how to cultivate community near you, including sharing some exciting news about Sustainable Bliss Collective's online community offering. So those are some of the highlights. There is a ton more in here. So without further ado, let's welcome Jasmine to Nourish. Jasmine, I am so excited to have you here with us today. I know that, from looking at your Instagram profile from talking to you offline, the work that you do is just so beyond inspiring. First of all, your page blows me away. Every time I'm stressed, I just go and look at it because it's so aesthetically pleasing. But just your overall vibe. I know that you're big into self-care, meditation, and I'm so excited to hear about the Sustainable Bliss Collective. And I just want to give you a huge and warm welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That's so nice to hear. I'm so glad that my page can provide that, because I know a lot of the time social media is not like that. So that really just warms my heart. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before we go any further, I always love to kick off with this question. And that is, what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself? And try not to factor in anything that you do. So don't make it your job. Everything else, we want to get to know you personally.
Yeah, I'm definitely an introvert. So I feel like that's the first thing that comes up anytime anyone asks me that. And I used to really hate that about myself, but now I've grown to really love it. So introverted. I'm creative. I would say I have that squirrel energy where I want to do a million things at once, and I can be pulled in so many different directions because I'm just such an ideas person. So creative. And then my third, I would say warm or welcoming, kind of what you're describing. You see the page on Instagram as, that's really what I try to embody, and I hope that comes across. So yeah, I would say warm.
Oh, it definitely does. I feel like when I look at your page, I feel soothed, nourished, which is obviously the theme of this podcast. And so I love looking at it. But I am so surprised to have you use the word introvert because
Really?
because of what you do. I mean, first of all, you're so out there publicly. You are leading a collective, a community that's, also, you're a savvy businesswoman from the looks of it, and you're putting yourself out there in front of thousands of people. I mean, I think it's actually going to be very inspiring to dig into that a bit. But yeah, I would not have guessed at all.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I think people who know me, quote unquote, in my real life, would definitely describe me as introverted probably immediately, because when I am in social situations, I feel like that comes out a lot more. Online, I have just grown to really enjoy sharing my own life. And so I can see, yeah, now that you mention it, I can see why that would come off as being extroverted. And at the beginning, when I first started sharing my journey, the reason I actually started Sustainable Bliss as a separate account was because I was too scared to share it on my personal. I thought people would think I was strange or weird to dive into everything health and wellness. So I actually started it as a separate account, more from a place of being, worried about what people would think. So that's changed now, and I'm so glad that I did it, because it gives it the opportunity to grow more than just my personal brand. But that is I would say that's where it came from. So it's kind of interesting.
I love that. I really appreciate you sharing that because, I know we're probably going to dive into how Sustainable Bliss Co. came to be. We'll talk about all that good stuff, but I definitely want to explore and really kind of have you serve as inspiration for other introverts out there who are looking to put themselves out there, because it can be scary. I can so relate to your decision to split up your business account from your personal account, because that's actually why I created Mira Wellness as a separate account. People are like, oh, is your name Mira? It's not, it's Kasha. But I can totally relate to that. Same reason. I did not want to feel judged. Although it was such a kind of taking back of the power once people did see what I was up to, and I actually started posting it on my personal account. But I love that as such a tangible tip for people who are afraid to put themselves out there, who are afraid to do it in a business sense, or also just in terms of meeting, people and building community, which social media, from what I see you doing, can be such a powerful way to do that. So I want to actually dive right into it. I'm going to hit you with the juicy questions. So you have launched the Sustainable Bliss Collective, which is a self-care community and a membership for ambitious humans who need that reminder to slow down, reprioritize their self-care, even when they're busy. One of the things that obviously stands out to me is community, and then of course that self-care bit. But I would love to hear your story around creating this. What inspired you? Like, where were you in your life? Tell us all the good stuff.
Yeah, of course. So I like to believe that I was always a healthy person, always, focused on my well-being, but it's really, when I am honest with myself, not really true. And so now that I look back and now that I've, dove into my story for different like business reasons and just getting really clear with myself, I know now that like it was really 2.5 years ago only that I started really taking my health and well-being seriously. And it was when I was working in corporate. So I had just graduated from university. It was working in corporate for the first time. And from the outside, as things often go, they probably seem great. And so I got gotten a job in my field. Like I said, I had just graduated. And so it was really exciting. I was living in a bigger city, had moved away from my parents, all of that kind of stuff. And things were great. And I have gratitude for all that was in my life and, all the things that I had. But things also kind of just seemed a little bit off. And so when I took the time, probably 6 months into working in corporate, to really start to get honest with myself, I was like, okay, something is off. I just don't feel like myself. And there ended up being a couple of reasons for it. So the first was that I just wasn't aligned with the job I was in. The values of that particular company just didn't really align with mine. And then the second was that this idea that I really wasn't prioritizing my self-care at all. I was the youngest person in the office, and I was surrounded by a lot of executives, and I was working in social media. That's what I went to school for, social media, website design. And I just had this story in my mind that these people thought my job was so dumb and that they thought that I had no purpose basically working there. I think that they just, this, no one ever told me this. It was all just in my head, but it was this story that they thought that, social media was kind of just a nice to have, and that my position could be gone within a day. I was the first person in that position. So I had this idea that I had to prove that it was worth hiring me, essentially. And so, yeah, again, I want to say no one at my job told me that. It was a great job overall, but I started to create this story in my head. And so because of that, I felt like I needed to work all the long hours, really take on jobs and things that were outside of my role that, again, my boss didn't tell me to, but when other managers would come to me with projects and things, I would just say yes to them. And it meant that I got super burnt out very quickly. And so when I finally, like I said, listened to myself enough to realize that something needed to change, I went to a nutritionist for support. And I ended up finding out I had Hashimoto's, which is an underactive thyroid. And it explained part of the reason why I was so fatigued and just feeling off. But what she explained to me was that essentially this was because of stress. It wasn't something that I probably got from hereditary or, anything like that. She said it was most likely onset by stress and by not taking care of myself. So in that moment, I've always been that type A achiever. So I was like, okay, this is bad. I can see in my blood work that things need to change. And so with that kind of evidence, I was able to start making some changes, and I made changes pretty quickly. I stayed at the job, but I changed a lot of things to do with my self-care routines and just taking care of myself. And then from that place, that's when I started to kind of document it. So I saw how much of an impact it had on my life, and I was like, oh my gosh, like why are not at the time I thought that not many people were talking about it, so I wanted to share my perspective on it. So I started Sustainable Bliss, like I said, as a separate account, and it was just a way for me to share my health and wellness journey. But then, as you said, it's since evolved from that place of just being a blog to document my own experience. It's become this community, this collective, and a lot of other things. I started teaching classes and, got my certifications and all of that stuff. But yeah, that's how it started. Did I answer your question when it comes? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I feel like I have so many follow-up questions. So let's take like a moment to dig into this. First of all, I just want to applaud you. First of all, okay, few things. First of all, who's laughing now in terms of that imposter syndrome? Let's just take a moment. Like, is social media a real thing? Is it necessary? I just kind of want to like place that there for you and for anybody out there who perhaps is in a similar situation of doubting themselves and just really recognizing. I just love how you were able to communicate what was a story for you versus your reality and obviously the reality in the world. So I want to like reflect that back because I think that might resonate with a lot of people who might be feeling like, A, how do I fit these people's expectations of me? How do I, really prove my worth? It's funny how that really perpetuates a lot of stress. The second thing I just want to reflect back to you, I swear I think this podcast can turn into what disease did my emotions cause me? Because every single person I've talked to so far has a story like that. And I just really appreciate you being so real and honest about your experience with Hashimoto's and stress. And I wanted to ask you, when you reflect on that term, quote, burnout, what did burnout look like for you? Because I feel like it's thrown around, so frequently. And I don't really know if everybody necessarily recognizes the signs, and they might be different, but I'm curious what your experience with burnout looks like, maybe some things that you've learned from your community. Are a lot of people experiencing similar symptoms?
Yeah. So for me, it was like number one was fatigue. I never, like, this is just a really tangible example, but I did not drink coffee all through like high school, all through university. Never felt the need for it. Never was like, oh, I don't have energy, I need to rely on coffee or anything like that. And then when I started working at corporate, it became like a pillar of my day. Like I needed one in the morning, and I sometimes even would have an afternoon cup. And looking back, I'm like, why did it take me 6 months to realize that was, that wasn't normal. That wasn't my normal. That was a habit that had developed simply out of me being really, really tired. And if you watch any of my reels, that coffee is still a huge part of my routine. It's like my daily thing. But now it's because I love the taste of it. I love the ritual of it. It's a slowness thing in the morning where I like to make it and like sit with it and drink my coffee while I read, all of that kind of stuff. When I was working in corporate, it was literally to help me get by. So there is very much of a different energy behind it. So my number one symptom was definitely fatigue. But I think a huge chunk of it, and I kind of alluded to it before when I said one of the other reasons that I was feeling off was because I wasn't aligned. And it was that I wasn't aligned with the company and like their values. But also I noticed that I was not aligning with even the job that I had signed up for, like the roles and responsibilities of that job. And it was not because I didn't like doing those things. It was just this lack of energy and this lack of like motivation, drive, whatever it was not there when I was really burnt out. So even the tasks that I had once loved and now literally I do social media. I have other clients, like this is only one of my businesses. I'm a virtual assistant as well. And so I do social media all the time for multiple clients. I do it for myself and I love it. And that energy is there because I have these other self-care pillars in place. But when I was feeling burnt out, the things that used to bring me joy and the job that I used to like really became so much more of a chore. And so I would say those were the two main things for me. And yeah, with my community, I would say like feeling a sense of fatigue, feeling like nothing's really like lighting you up, or like you don't feel motivated to do the same things that you used to really love doing. I think those are, number one, number two signs of burnout, in my opinion, my experience.
Yeah. I really appreciate those specific examples because I feel like so many people take some of those experiences as that's just the norm, I think. Because a little bit of my background, I used to work in corporate as well, and I wasn't always burnt out, but I did experience burnout. And what's really interesting, and I don't remember where I heard this, but I think it might have been my therapist who called out that the further you are in your journey of burnout, the longer it takes to recover, because it's not just something that is a mental thing. It's also, there are physical effects to burnout, to stress, as you alluded to very clearly. And it takes some time to recover. So I think recognizing those signs and symptoms early on, I think is just super, super valuable. So I wanted to ask you, you obviously currently today are sharing a lot of like self-awareness, self-reflection. But for, I think, a lot of people, myself included in the past, it was really difficult to get to that place of clarity. Like, wow, I feel misaligned with what it is I'm doing because I'm not aligned with these values. I feel burnt out. Like, these are really concrete kind of like, I guess, categories that you're able to reflect showing up in yourself. May they be experiences or feelings, whatever. What are some of the things that have helped you or that you share with your community that can kind of help people find more clarity as to what is true for them? Like, are they burnt out? Are they misaligned? Like, if they're feeling off, if you meet somebody who's feeling off today, do you have some tangible like practices that you would recommend that they lean into to figure out what is it that's true for them?
Yeah, definitely. So the things that provided to be most useful for me was meditation, which is why I then became a teacher, a certified teacher, and journaling. Like those were some of the first things that I started doing, the first practices I started implementing that really helped me to kind of connect with myself and just recognizing what I was going through. But I would say, regardless of what practices you choose, the commonality among all of the practices that I kind of recommend is it's disconnecting from social media, it's disconnecting from the external world and connecting with yourself instead. So whatever that looks like to you, if you love art and you get into like a really creative flow as you are painting or drawing, or if long walks, like without listening to, someone else talking in your ear, although I love podcasts. So like 90% of the time I'm listening to a podcast when I go on a walk, but there are those times where I realize that, okay, I have been consuming content all day. I've been listening to other people tell me things all day. And as much as those things hold value, I think it's also super valuable to recognize like what our bodies, our minds are trying to tell us. And we don't often give that enough time throughout the day. The one thing I will like say was really evident to me when I was going, it's still now, but especially when I was going through this, I would get to the end of the day and I would have so many thoughts before I went to bed that I couldn't fall asleep because I was just thinking. And it was because I had given myself no time throughout the day to just have that mind wandering, to have that kind of internal conversation, that dialogue with myself, because I had been busy doing literally all day. And so I would say if you find that you get to, you put your head on the pillow and then all of a sudden you're exhausted, but all of a sudden you can't sleep because you have a million thoughts racing in your head. I would say, like, is there 5 minutes throughout the day where you can just take a break from whatever it is you're doing and just start to like listen to yourself and what you need? And so those are the times that I like to take a few deep breaths, lean on practices like meditation, like journaling, like getting creative, like taking a long walk. I said 5 minutes and then I said a long walk, but you know what I mean? Like, go around the block. That's enough sometimes. And just start to kind of connect with yourself, because a lot of the time we are told what we should be doing, or, we're seeing what other people are doing, and it can be kind of hard to separate that from what we actually need. And so when I started doing that more, then I was able to, as you're saying, like, have this self-awareness to be like, oh, I thought I was, I thought I was fine. But when I think about it, like, I didn't used to drink coffees, and now I drink coffee 3 times a day when I'm working, when I'm working here. What changed? And then you can start to kind of reflect on it, dive a little bit deeper, and just notice what comes up for you without any like judgment, without any expectation. Just, yeah, taking that time for yourself and seeing what comes up.
I love that advice. And it actually brought up like such a concrete example in my life, because I remember towards the end of my tech career, I don't know if it's like the end forever, but the end right now, let's just say, I remember I was like so burnt out that I was literally like, I couldn't even remember what happened during the day. Like, I would sit down stressed out starting at like 8 a.m. and then end the day like hadn't peed all day. Literally, that's also not healthy. Let's just like, we don't have to go in that tangent, but that's not good. Like, and I was drinking a lot of water. And I just remember being like, what just happened? And then I was so stressed and I would like release it all and just start crying. And I just remember feeling so disconnected. And one of the things that I brought into my life, which actually helped me realize how out of alignment I was, I actually followed one of your practices with the journaling. I gave myself a challenge to journal every single day. Every single time I had like an intense emotion come up, I would write a couple of words as to what I was experiencing. And I started to like notice patterns in what was triggering me. And like when X happened, then I felt this way. And I started to really recognize like what was happening when I felt good, when I felt bad. And I feel like without that, honestly, it's so impossible to figure out what's going on inside. It's like you are your own best investigator. And I just love that, the idea of journaling and meditation is like kind of gateways to that.
Yeah, exactly. And just like what you're saying about not peeing, it brought up another example for me. Like, I used to not eat lunch too. I would just, and I think that's so common if you're working at a desk, and it's just easy to forget about ourselves in that time. And so, yeah, it's quite interesting how much comes up when we just allow ourselves to like brain dump journal, or, as you were saying, just like putting a few words down. And what really helped me was I was doing it every morning. So I started, I tried morning pages for a while. If you're familiar with that concept, it's like basically, 3 pages of just allowing yourself to free write without, stopping yourself. And so I was doing that for quite a while right at the beginning of my journey. I don't so much do it anymore. I like a lot of prompts now. But what came up day in and day out was, the job was what was causing me stress, and these stories that I had in my mind about what the job was meant to be and what my expectations were at the job, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's when I was like, okay, well, what would I want my life to look like? If this job is not aligned, what do I want my days to look like? And so when I started to dive into that, just having that one realization, I was able to kind of look at and explore what would my dream life look like? What would my dream days look like? I started really diving into all the podcasts, all the personal development books, and, looking at all of I think it just wasn't even like an option before in my mind that like, oh, you can have a day where it's easy or it feels good, And so then I started to be like, oh, what if I could? Like, what would that look like? And so, like I said, I stayed at the job for 2 years, like, and I had this burnout like 6 months in. So I'm not saying that like things need to change overnight. I'm like, be very realistic with it, but just know that there is a possibility if you're feeling like something is off, that you can change it, in the future. And at the beginning, it was just in 5 minutes a day, doing these practices, making my morning routine a little bit, easier, flowier. I don't think that's a word, but and then, and then over time, it was like, okay, maybe I can come into work a little bit later and have a longer morning routine. And I asked my boss about that, and they allowed me to do that. And then it was, can I work from home one day a week? And I just started to make these like gradual changes that really, really helped me to find what I was looking for in my day to day. So I think once you start to have these realizations, it's great to just put them on paper, but then start to like ask yourself better questions about what could this mean? And, what would I want instead? So don't just leave it at, this is how I'm feeling. Like investigate, like you were saying, and see what you would want instead.
I think that is such tangible advice. And it's such a journey of getting to know yourself. And I really love you calling out the fact that, hey, you kind of need to disconnect to reconnect. It's like balancing both the yin and the yang, like connected, active all the time. You need a little bit of balance of that yin. So I know you started to shift into this, but I do actually concretely want to ask you. I feel like I've heard this from a lot of former coworkers. I hear it from some of my clients. Balancing people's expectations of you with what it is that you truly want, right? So you described a world where you felt like you were feeling a lot of pressure. It caused you to overwork. And obviously you came to realize that that wasn't going to work for you. And you started to talk about how you shifted into that. Can you talk a little bit more about what that process looked like? And, was it just boom, easy? Like you just decided that, hey, I'm going to take care of myself now because that's what I need. And then, Monday rolls around and here you are just nailing it. Or, was it kind of a process? Because I know that for some people, it can actually feel probably really like unattainable in a way. Like okay, I know I'm not happy. This isn't working. I know I want to be in that state. How did you get there?
Okay, it definitely wasn't overnight. And it's still something that I work on now. I think there are constantly stories like running through my mind. I think I'm just a little bit more aware now, or able to, investigate a little bit quicker. Like, where is that actually coming from? Is that me? Or is that is that just a story I'm placing on myself? So didn't happen overnight. I would say, so I think the first thing that I did, and I did mention, like, I went to a nutritionist for support. And I think that was honestly the best thing that I did for myself, because I had that sense of accountability. And so it wasn't, at the beginning, I think I did not prioritize myself enough to be like, oh, I need to eat healthier. I'm going to actually do it. I was the first person to fall off of my to-do list. I did not, make that a priority at the beginning. And I like to think now that I do that a little bit better, but at the beginning, accountability was so key. So finding someone who I had regular check-ins with, and even though it was nutrition support, it was a lot. It was a lot more than that. Like, I was able to share how I was feeling. They were almost like mini therapy sessions, to be honest, because we really did dive into why I was feeling stressed and what habits, rituals I could do and incorporate in my day in order to, alleviate a little bit of that stress. So from working with her, I was able to kind of, just dive a little bit deeper into it, and then also start to really hold myself accountable, because we would meet once a month. And so then I would have to like show to myself, or show to her what I had done, and if I had actually said or done what I said I was going to do. And yeah, that's just like so key. And I think it cannot be underestimated, especially at the beginning, the importance of accountability. If you can hold yourself accountable right at the beginning, oh my God, good for you. But I could not. And so that was really, really powerful and helpful for me. And it's something I still rely on. I still have coaches. I still, do this work myself because I still fall into like old traps of being like, oh, it's fine. I can wait another day to do this thing. And then it never gets done. So, yeah, the accountability piece is huge. And then from there, I really had to start slow. And one of the reasons that Sustainable Bliss is called Sustainable Bliss is because I feel like so often we try to do a million things at once and it just doesn't work. Like, it's like the whole New Year's resolution thing where you make like 15 resolutions and then you don't even know where to start. And then by week 3, you're already feeling unmotivated or like you don't even want to do them because you just put too much on your plate. And so the idea behind Sustainable Bliss is it is sustainable for you. It's, not trying to make a 4-hour morning routine right from the beginning because that's probably not going to work for you. So at the beginning, it was really like, honestly, where do I have 5 minutes in my day? And when I was super fatigued, I just had to prioritize sleep. Like that was the first thing that I needed to do. So it was about going to bed a little bit earlier. It was about actually leaving work on time and talking to my boss and being like, I realized that I, have been falling into these patterns and I'm staying late at the office a lot. I need to go home, essentially, And she was like, of course, like no one told you you needed to stay, like she was completely understanding of it. And I just, yeah, again, it goes back to those stories that I thought it was going to be this big deal, but it really wasn't. That wasn't expected of me. Wasn't expected of me to stay super late. So I started actually taking my lunch, leaving on time, getting the sleep that I needed. And then when I started to feel like, oh, okay, things are changing. I'm feeling a little bit more energy. I started to cook a little bit more at home or prioritize, more healthy foods. And then I had enough energy to, okay, what would happen if I set my alarm half an hour early and didn't hit snooze? What if I actually went to the gym? And so I got a gym membership. And again, it's that concept of paying for it too. I paid for the gym membership, so then I went to the gym. If I hadn't paid, I probably wouldn't have worked out at home as much. And so I just made like all of these little changes, but it was over time. And that's, really what was helpful. So the gym, I ended up going, the yoga, I did not pay for. I would look in my area for all the free trials that I could do. And then I would do 7 days of free trials and I would go as much as I could in those 7 days, or I would get like a free class, here and there. And again, I would use them though, because it was like a limited time. So I kind of just like forced myself to do things at the beginning, which doesn't sound great when I say that I forced myself to do them, but it really was about just recognizing that I was worthy of taking the time. And then when I started to see how good I felt after that, I was like, oh, okay, wait, this actually does need to be a priority. And then it started to really be something that I enjoyed. Like I enjoyed going to the gym. I enjoyed getting up a little bit earlier. I enjoyed leaving work early because I didn't feel guilty about it anymore. I knew the impact that it was having on my mental health, my physical health, and also, like I could see it in the blood work changing. Like all of these things just started to pile up. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I started. And in terms of releasing the expectations, yeah, I think it just came down to being really honest with myself and writing down how I was feeling and recognizing that they were stories. And then talking to my boss was like another huge thing, which was probably like the scariest thing that I ever did. But we had weekly meetings and I was like, okay, I've never brought up this other side of things that, other employees are coming to me for work that I don't think is part of my role. And can I like discuss that with her? And she was so incredible. And she, like I said, of course, she was like, of course, you're not supposed to be doing that. Like, let's manage this thing. So anyways, that was very long-winded, but I hope that gives some insight into how it was like definitely a gradual process of me just slowly starting to reprioritize like all these different parts of my life.
No, I think that was, I really appreciate you sharing with depth kind of what that process looks like, because I know firsthand, imagining myself like 5 years ago, I would have loved to hear somebody's journey with this, and really also taking, what helped you build up the courage to have those conversations, because I think that's also such a huge part of it. Like we feel like we have all these expectations and pressures on us to be perfectionists, to do well. And it can be really hard not just to be like, hey, I'm going to prioritize myself, figuring out how on earth do I get the courage to do that and make that part of the way that I think about what I do day to day, but also the courage to set boundaries, essentially, right? Like with your boss, by communicating what's coming up, what are your needs, that you perhaps need to leave on time, or, asking questions about what your responsibilities are. Like those are difficult conversations. So I think hearing ways how you were able to navigate that is really inspiring. And I actually think that is such a perfect segue into, I'd love to hear more about what it is that you've kind of evolved Sustainable Bliss Co. into, because I know that, it started off as kind of a place that you were sharing your journey, but at this point it is a community, and it is a place that other people can go for, accountability and support from others. So I'd love to hear what your mission is with the community of Sustainable Bliss Co. and, some of what really inspired you to bring it to life in this way.
So like you said, when I first started the community, it was very much about, I did want to help people for sure, but it was very individualized. Like it was my experience only. And what I realized as more and more people would comment, or people from my personal page would come over and, start following Sustainable Bliss, and it was people that I wasn't expecting to be interested in that kind of thing, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is a little bit bigger than just my experience. So I started to open it up to like contributors, and I had, other people write blogs for us and stuff like that. And from there, I was able to just see that this was something that was really needed. And even more than that, this is needed more um in like that community setting. Like I didn't feel like I was doing it justice with just blogs or Instagram posts, which are great, and sometimes we just want to dive into those like when we're alone. Like I said, I'm super introverted. I love just reading blogs on my own time and doing things individually. But when I was experiencing meditation and yoga at the beginning, it was always in a group setting. Like I said, I would go to classes because when I paid for them, I started to take them more seriously. And there's just something about this like community feel. COVID has obviously made it a lot harder to experience that in person. But when I would go to a meditation class, and there you can just hear everyone exhaling, and you can just feel like the energy of the room, I was like, oh my gosh, I really, really want that. And I want to bring that into the virtual world. I always knew that I wanted to do it virtually because I have absolutely zero idea where I want to settle down or where I want to live. Like I just don't know yet. So I knew I wanted to make it virtually, but I was like, how can I make that kind of community experience still? So it's still a work in progress for sure, as to like, how can I cultivate this a little bit more? How can I get that community feel? But I think that, and just in divine timing, like COVID came at the same time that I got certified and started wanting to like teach online classes and stuff. And so it kind of forced me to do that anyways. And it forced people to start to recognize that virtual could just be, could be almost as good, if not as good, as being in a physical space with people. And I'm never going to say that it's going to replace like being in a physical space with people, but I do think that you really can get a great community feel in an online environment where you're still safe in your home, and you feel like you can log off at any time. There's not like there's definitely benefits from being in a virtual space. Like, you don't have to have your camera on, you don't have to have your audio on, no one has to hear you. So it's a really great introductory way, I would say, for people to experience things like meditation, where they might be a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit wary, like, I don't know if this is right for me. Just, try it out. Come for 5 minutes, see how you feel. If you need to log off, it's fine. I will check on you after, but I'm just gonna just to make sure you're okay. But you don't need to stay for the whole time. You don't need to leave the comfort of your own home. You can literally do the classes in bed. So I think there's some interesting aspects of it that makes it a good blend of, this is an individual practice that I'm cultivating for myself, and I can sit here and journal. But at the same time, if I want to pop something in the chat box during a class, if something's coming up for me, if I want to see what other people are experiencing, I also have that community feel. And you can come onto a class and you can see my face, and I'm the only one with my camera on pretty much all of the time. And I just, you see my cat in the background. Like, it's a very warm, I would say, and community feel. And so through hosting more and more classes, I've just realized that that's really what I want to be able to cultivate for people.
This is like an introvert extrovert's dream community interaction, I feel like. So for those folks out there who are not familiar with the Sustainable Bliss Co community, can you walk us through, what does a day or a week look like when you're part of this community? Do you have kind of themes every month? Do you have specific events? Like, if I'm new and I want to join this community, like, walk me through what that looks like.
Yeah, so if you just want to be part of the community, like, come just, on Instagram, get some inspiration, send me a message, like, I'm always there. So that's one level of it. If you do want to join the membership, you want to hop into a class, then that's, like, I would say, the second level. And so, yes, we have monthly themes. I try to keep the blog content, the Instagram content for the month, and then all the classes that I host all within the same kind of theme. Sometimes I just feel a spark of inspiration in a random direction and I just post it anyway. But, for the most part, yes, we stick to a monthly theme. And then each week there's generally 2 live classes that you can pop into. So Monday mornings, we do like a meditation and journaling session, or a tapping and journaling session. And then Thursday evenings is generally our second class, and it's either a longer meditation, or we bring in experts to chat on different topics that I don't necessarily have credentials or, experience in, like manifestation and, energy management and all of these things. And then I also do one coaching call a month on a Thursday too, which is just an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of that month, and we do different practices in that too. So there's generally, right now there's like 2 live classes a month, and then access to all of the recordings, so that if you can't make it live, or depending on your schedule or your time zone, then you can still dive into all of the classes that we have. And it's just, I'm hoping it's just a great place. And from current members, that they just feel like they can come and like exhale and like just take time for themselves.
And I think it helps a lot with, as you mentioned, like accountability and support, right? I think that the experiences that we talked about just on this podcast in terms of stress management, handling kind of how do you recognize some of the stories in your mind that are real versus not, like balancing all of that, and then also implementing changes. It's so helpful to do it in a group. And I think, unfortunately, some of the stats around loneliness over the course of not even the pandemic, like this is even pre-pandemic, are pretty scary. Like the percentage of the population out there that is feeling lonely day to day, doesn't feel connected, and that has huge detrimental effects on our mental health, our spiritual health, our physical health. So, I'm curious, what has it been like connecting people online, like bringing them together, like in an online setting? Have you noticed like perhaps something that is different or unique in terms of bringing people together? Is it harder to get them to connect? Because if you're the only one with the camera on, like what have you noticed in terms of interactions? And follow-up question, do you think it is possible to like have deep connections without really interacting face to face?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think it's funny, even with the cameras off and everything, you can still, I swear, feel like the energy if people are resonating with, what's happening. It's just really interesting that it's still there. You still feel like you're connected. Um, and I think one of the best things about it being virtual is there's literally people from all over who are able to participate, whereas before I wouldn't have met a lot of the people in the membership. I don't even know if I don't think there's anyone in the membership from Montreal, which is where I'm currently living. It's just so interesting to see the diversity that you get in a kind of online space like this. And yeah, I definitely think that it serves a beautiful purpose in terms of connecting with people that are clearly interested in the same things as you, but you wouldn't necessarily meet day to day. Like there's generally, like, I tend to attract the same kind of age group and all that kind of stuff. But even then, it's like not always. There's always people who from, I don't know, all age ranges and all locations who are interested in this kind of stuff. And it's so interesting to see that people resonate and connect on, the same level, even when they are so far apart. So I think you can really get a sense of the energy, especially when people are using the chat box, when they're sharing, when they're encouraging each other. This morning we had a session on like crafting your vision for the year. And it was just, I said, if you want to like put it out there, put it in the chat box. Like, what is one sentence, what's your vision for the year? What's your word for the year? And the stuff that came up is it's just so beautiful to see. And, then someone puts it in and then everyone else is like, oh, okay, I'll share too, kind of that kind of energy. And yeah, I love that.
That is so beautiful, especially right now, considering how isolated I think we all feel all across the world. I think it's just so nice to hear about some of the organic initiatives that have spun up over this, really scary period of time. And I think it is absolutely so true. I hosted actually a workshop last night on vision setting for the new year. And it was remarkable because I had a couple of people there who, prior to the workshop were just like, I have no idea what this is. Like, it sounded interesting, so I'm coming. They didn't know what to expect. And it was just really amazing to see people connecting who have never met before. I'm based in Puerto Rico right now, but I had people from San Diego, people from really all over the world. And I agree with you. I think it does offer for this like level of diversity that did not exist before. So I actually wanted to pivot into a slightly related question with community, because I really do think that social wellness and social health is something that we're not talking about that will really factor in probably like as we come out of this pandemic. We're already talking about, I think it was the US General Surgeon General who was talking about the epidemic we have with mental health and the suicide rate for teens here in the United States. And there are just some really crazy stats out there. I'll obviously link them in the show notes, the most recent ones, so we have accurate data. But I wanted to get your thoughts. Like, as people are coming out of this pandemic, there are a couple of things that I'm noticing coming up, and also from my research. One, people feel lonely. Two, people feel like they're struggling to connect, because when you actually are disconnected for a period of time, like the barrier of entry to reach out, meet somebody new, put yourself out there, it is like so much higher, right? Because you kind of haven't really seen people. It's awkward to be in groups. It's weird to see all these strangers. And so as somebody who I would at this point, even I'll dub you a community curator on top of everything else that you do, what are some tangible tips that you might have to help people connect with each other? Like if they're seeking community locally, if they're looking to meet somebody new, like do you have some advice for tangible ways to kind of get over that hump of taking initiative? And also, where are some places that you would advise people go to, I don't know, like build community, whether it be locally or online?
That's such a good question. I will not say that I'm an expert, just because I started this very much in COVID. And so I don't have the experience of really curating community outside of the virtual space. But at the same time, we also moved provinces during COVID, and we're still very much in lockdown here. So I can't really speak to, again, like how we're going to find friends and things when that's a possibility. But I think there's a couple of things. First is just recognizing that everyone is going through this basically. Like this is one of the only times that everyone on the planet is like experiencing the same kind of thing, obviously at different levels. And I don't want to discredit like anyone's experience, because yeah, this has affected everyone in so many different ways. But the very basic surface level, like being in lockdown, I think that's an experience that all of us now share. And we all, I think, probably feel that sense of loneliness, like at and have felt it at one point or another. So yeah, coming out of it, I think just recognizing that it's a collective experience and emotion is going to be really important, because maybe then you will be the person to take that first step when you're, going up to someone saying hi or DMing someone on Instagram. Recognizing that they probably feel the same way, and maybe they've wanted to make the same connection, and you're just the first one to do it. So that would be one thing. The second thing I would say is just like, don't worry if you get some no's or some non-responses. It's not indicative of like you as a person at all. And a lot of people are going through a lot of challenging times, and so maybe connection is just not something that they are into right now, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that you reaching out was a bad thing. Maybe actually it really encouraged that person and made them feel like, oh, like a breath of fresh air, but they didn't respond because they didn't feel like they had the energy or the capacity to do so. So don't take it, again, like recognize that's like a story you're creating. Like a non-response does not mean any one thing in particular. So even if you feel like an interaction didn't go as you planned or expected, like know that it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong or that you shouldn't have reached out at all. So that would be another thing. And then in terms of just, finding places to connect, I think as much as I said, like disconnect from the online world, I'm very much present on social media because I recognize that the potential that it has to connect me with people all around the world, but also just in my area. And, algorithms are smart, so you'll tend to be connected with people in your area, or, people who have similar beliefs and, routines, interests as you. So I think it's a really great place to go for connection. I don't think that all the connection should happen over there, but it is a great place to start. That's how we found each other. And, we're able to have this great conversation now. So just being open to using it as a tool is a really great place to start. And then in your home community, I think like places like a meditation studio or a yoga studio or a gym are great places, because they're kind of like gateway drugs is not the right term to use here at all. I don't know but okay, if you bear with me for a moment, what I'm trying to say is they're not places that you need to go and like immediately connect, or you don't need to be like loud or talk to anyone if you don't want to. But after class or before class, like there is that opportunity to connect, or like maybe even meditation, not really, but like in a yoga class, if you're struggling with like a move or something, it's like an easy way to make a comment kind of in class and potentially strike up a conversation with someone, but there's no pressure to. Am I making sense? There are places where connection can easily happen, but they also don't have to. Same thing I would even say with like a coffee shop and, talking to people just in your local area at a local restaurant. all of that kind of stuff.
I think those are some fantastic ideas. And as somebody who feels lonely sometimes herself, and, I'm here in Puerto Rico for the next several months. So, by the way, if you're out there and you hear this, I need a friend. That's not actually why I asked that, but seriously, I just want to throw out there that, think back. I'm thinking back to like the last time I was on the receiving end of somebody reaching out to me, may it be online, which ironically, I've made so many like-minded friends since starting my account because I feel like, yes, algorithms are smart, and two, there is kind of like a lower barrier of entry because I don't see the person. So if I'm rejected, I kind of like forget about it. But anyway, that's a whole side tangent. But I just want to kind of go back to the point of reflecting on the last time I was on the receiving end of somebody reaching out or, trying to connect. It was always welcome. And I guess that's not necessarily always the case, but I think your advice is just so fantastic. And I just want to echo that I think probably more people would prefer to receive a friendly hello or a smile or kind of an action in the direction of connection as opposed to not. And it just feels good for those of us who have been isolated for so long.
Yeah, exactly. And like it can just be, I mean, you don't have to go right up and say, "Hey, like let's hang out tomorrow." Like it doesn't have to be like that either. Just see the conversation that flows if you're willing to go. And like literally a message like I like love your content, or like you inspired me, like if you start from that kind of place too, it's like who does not want to receive a message like that, or a compliment when you're in a coffee shop in your area. There's so many different ways to connect with people that, again, it doesn't have to be like I see this person, I want them to be a long-term friend. It's just like, make small conversation and just see where it goes, and recognize that regardless of the outcome, it was a chance for you to connect. And it's going to be hard at the beginning, especially for all of the reasons that you mentioned. Like it's just not the norm anymore, unfortunately. But there is, there is the chance and the potential for us to get back to that point where it feels just natural again. It's just going to, like anything, take a little bit of practice, I think.
Absolutely. So I do actually want to segue to a different kind of connection. It's more in the vein of disconnection. So this is a purely selfish question, but because I have you here, I have every right to do this. So you have every right to not want to answer it, but I still really want to ask. And that is, I think my first message to you was, I love your page. Like it is so soothing, so relaxing. And your content really does inspire me in that way. And I wanted to ask you concretely, like, how do you balance your connection and disconnection from a technology point of view? Like, you are a mindfulness teacher, you preach inner connection, slowing down, slow living. Your page is like beautifully curated to reflect that. And, it's almost this like weird dichotomy, because when you're filming your very zen morning routine, you're not actually just living it. So I would love to hear from you. How do you balance the two? Do you balance the two? And how do you do it, if so?
Yeah, this is such a good question. And it's something I've been thinking about more and more recently as I have gotten into this realm of like filming these mini daily vlogs. I will say what you see on the page is like such a small portion of my day that it's not representative of everything that happens. A lot of my day is spent online and working and doing all the things that I need to do to run my business. But when I can, take time to just what I have realized is that it does provide inspiration for people. That is my hope. So even if it takes an extra minute for me to like film the coffee before I drink it, or film like a part of my meditation session, it it feels like it serves like a deeper purpose, so it doesn't pull away from the experience as much. However, that being said, I definitely still take breaks from it. Like I'm never going to be someone who can vlog every single day or every single part of my routine, because it can get really draining and it can take away from the experience. But a lot of it is, I think, just the purpose for me comes from sharing it, showing that you can have these like mindful moments even when you have a really busy day, and that you can reprioritize yourself, especially first thing in the morning, which is generally when I'm filming. So I think, yeah, there is a balance there. It's definitely interesting. And I am thinking about this more and more, but as like, am I practicing what I'm preaching if I am reaching for my phone to film this little bit? It's like the same thing when you're on vacation and then you notice that you're like taking all the photos and you're not experiencing it in the moment. So I'm trying to do it a little bit less, but at the same time, I do think that it really does serve a purpose. And as long as it's not taking up my entire routine or my entire morning, it is really just like I'm taking literally a 2-second clip, a 15-second clip here and there. So as long as it's not, taking away from the experience too much, I think the pros outweigh the cons in terms of me like sharing this message. So that's kind of where I'm standing on it right now. But I think that could definitely change. And like over the holidays, for example, I didn't post. I posted like 2 times because I just really wanted to experience that time with my family. And so I was really, really disconnected. And now I have this like motivation. It's like the new year. And so I've started to dive into it a little bit deeper, but I'm sure that, a few weeks from now, I'll be like, okay, let's slow it down again.
Be present and aware of how present and aware you are. I love it.
Yes, you said it so much better than me.
I'm just summarizing. You give the knowledge, I'm just giving the blurbs. So, in an effort to be, quote, mindful of your time, I am going to start to wrap it up here, although I could keep going for hours. But before I ask you like a couple more questions, I just wanted to ask you this very specific one, which is kind of exciting to ask. What is it that you are most looking forward to? Like coming up in your business, in your life, tell us, other than amazing coffee shots, because I know we can expect that. And I look forward to that tomorrow.
Yes, always a coffee. In general, I am excited for hopefully some things to open up again here. We're kind of just in, a little bit of a really lockdown. Like we have a curfew implemented right now and it's like not so fun. So I am excited for the potential that goes away so I can get back to like actually going to coffee shops and sitting down and going to restaurants and sitting down and all those things that I really do enjoy. But in the meantime, I'm still loving my my apartment and doing what I can in my apartment to make it super cozy, and coffee shop vibes is really what I'm going for all the time. In terms of this year as a whole, though, my word is actually like structures and systems for greater ease. So it's not a word, it's a full phrase I got going here, because I feel like recently I have leaned so far into the the one side of like, making my mornings slow and my days like slow, that I've kind of lost sight of like my vision, which is to grow the business. And so I'm trying to find a balance where if I can implement certain systems or, hire and delegate, then I will be able to like accomplish these things while still feeling this ease, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of trying to find, what can I implement that will make my future life a little bit easier, that will make things flow a little bit better in my business. And so that's actually really exciting to me, because I see, first of all, the end goal of like experiencing a little bit more ease and flow if these workflows and things are set up. But also I'm kind of just a nerd who's like excited to be like, okay, what productivity software can I like dive into and actually start to use, and where's like, give me the new journals and all of those kinds of things. So that's like general life, what I'm excited about. And then just the membership is always exciting to me. So figuring out how it can serve more people and what I can do to make it more accessible for people. I'm working on a few different things in that realm that I'm excited to hopefully launch, bring to fruition this year.
Well, I'm excited for that too. And for folks out there who want to find you, find your community, where can they find you? I'll obviously link it in the show notes. That goes without saying, but shout it out for people too.
Yeah, if you like the method of Instagram, that's definitely where I am the most. So at Sustainable Bliss Co. And then my personal is just at Jasmine Irven. And online, if you like to delve into all the blogs and longer form content, then our website, sustainableblissco.com. And there's a free meditation on there for you. It's just like a 7-minute little relaxation meditation that you can download to get a sense of if this might be right for you or if this is a good habit to start to implement. And then if you are interested in joining the community, definitely join the waitlist, and then you'll be the first to know when doors are open or what your options are. As I was speaking to, like me making it more accessible, me figuring out some different things. You'll be the first to know on those.
Awesome. Jasmine, this was so soothing, nourishing, and really inspiring. So thank you so much for coming on here today, for having this conversation. I'm so excited to have the community launch, and it was such a pleasure speaking with you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. You ask such beautiful questions, and I hope that I was able to articulate what I was saying well enough for you.
It was
for your audience.
Perfect. It was perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Nourish. If you heard anything on today's episode that really resonated with you, feel free to share it with your friends, your family members, or anyone who you think might be able to benefit from the conversation. Second, I am so eager to hear from all of you. If you have a moment and you'd like to, I'd so appreciate an honest review of Nourish. Of course, I love the 5-star reviews and it helps this podcast grow, but above anything else, I appreciate honesty. I promise I read each and every review myself, and I work to integrate your feedback into future episodes. Finally, if you want to connect with any of the speakers, please check out the show notes for direct links to websites plus social media. And if you want to learn more about holistic counseling or traditional Chinese medicine and the work that I do, please head over to my website at www.mirawellness.co or my Instagram at Mira_wellness_co to connect. Thanks again for being a listener, and see you next week.